When I was away on a trip, my kids sold my dog. We needed fast cash, they explained. I returned quietly and asked, so, who bought him? The next morning, the doorbell rang and the new owners stood there with something that made them all lose it in fear. Can you imagine pouring your heart and soul into building your perfect sanctuary, a place you literally bled and cried to restore, only to wake up one day and find your own family trying to break in and call it their summer home? That's exactly what happened to me, Christine Anderson. And let me tell you, it was a moment of absolute, bone-chilling betrayal. My name is Christine Anderson, and I'm 35 years old. 3 years ago, my grandfather left me his mountain cabin, my childhood's safe haven. I poured my heart, my savings, and every single weekend into restoring it, creating my perfect retreat. Then came that notification, a message in our family group chat from my cousin. Perfect. Your mountain cabin is just sitting there. We are making it our summer home. Everyone loved the idea. Everyone, that is, except me. Life has a funny way of giving you exactly what you need when you least expect it. When my grandfather passed away 3 years ago, I was utterly devastated. Harold Anderson had been more than just my grandfather. He was my mentor, my confidant, the one person in my family who truly understood me. While my parents were always busy with their careers and social obligations, Grandpa Harold taught me about self-reliance, creative problem-solving, and finding joy in solitude. I still remember the day the lawyer called me into his office. I sat there, still numb from the funeral, as he explained that Grandpa had left me his mountain cabin. Not to my parents, not to his other children, but to me, his middle granddaughter. The cabin sat on 3 acres of land, nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, about 3 hours from my apartment in Charlotte. He was very specific, the lawyer explained. He wanted you to have the cabin because, and I quote, Christine is the only one who will appreciate it for what it is, not what it could be worth. Those words meant everything to me. As a freelance graphic designer working remotely, I had the flexibility to make use of the cabin. But more importantly, I understood what my grandfather meant. That cabin represented freedom, creativity, and peace, not a real estate opportunity or vacation rental income. The cabin had been my safe haven throughout my childhood. Whenever family tensions ran high or I needed an escape from my parents' expectations, Grandpa would invite me up for weekends. We'd hike, fish in the nearby lake, and sit on the porch watching fireflies as he told stories of his youth. Inside those pine walls, I felt accepted for exactly who I was. When I first visited the cabin after inheriting it, reality hit hard. The place needed significant work. The roof leaked in 3 places. The plumbing was temperamental at best, and decades of mountain winters had taken their toll on the exterior. My grandfather had maintained it well into his 70s, but as his health declined in his final years, so did the cabin's condition. Most of my family thought I should just sell it. It's a money pit, my mother warned. You don't have the skills or resources to fix something like that. My father added, my cousin Allison suggested I sell it to her husband's real estate development company for a family discount, of course. But I couldn't sell it. This wasn't just property. This was my grandfather's legacy to me. So, I began the long, arduous process of restoration. I used nearly all my savings for the major repairs, hiring professionals for the electrical work and structural issues. For everything else, I taught myself. I watched countless tutorial videos, consulted with hardware store employees, and even made friends with local contractors who gave me advice. Every weekend for that first year, I drove those 3 hours to work on some aspect of the cabin. The transformation wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about making the cabin mine while honoring my grandfather's memory. I kept his hand-carved bookshelf, but refreshed the finish. I preserved the river stone fireplace, but added efficient inserts. I updated the kitchen with modern appliances, but maintained the rustic charm of the wooden countertops he had installed decades ago. My family's interest in the cabin waxed and waned during this process. Initially, there were comments about how I was wasting my time and money. Then, as photos of my progress appeared on social media, there were suddenly offers to help that somehow always involved them using the cabin afterward. I politely declined. This was my project, my sanctuary. The relationship with my family had always been complicated. My parents, both successful corporate attorneys, raised me and my siblings with the expectation that we would always accommodate others, especially family. Family comes first was the mantra, but in practice, it often meant my boundaries came last. My cousins had a history of taking advantage of my generosity, borrowed clothes that never returned, borrowed money that was never repaid, and the unspoken expectation that I would always be the one to adjust my plans to fit theirs. Growing up, I was labeled the selfish one whenever I attempted to establish any boundaries. Over time, I had created distance, maintaining minimal contact. Holiday gatherings, the occasional birthday celebration, and the family group chat were my concessions to keeping the peace. I had learned that giving my family too much information about my life inevitably led to unwanted opinions and interference. Last month, after hearing about some minor vandalism at a few properties in the area, I decided to invest in a comprehensive security system for the cabin. The company installed motion-activated cameras, a smart lock system, floodlights, and even a two-way communication system that allowed me to speak through exterior speakers. From my phone, I could monitor and control everything. The peace of mind was worth every penny. With the cabin finally restored and secured, I felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything else in my life. My freelance business was successful, but there was something special about creating this space with my own hands. The cabin represented the first place that truly felt like it was mine, a physical manifestation of my independence and growth. Little did I know that my family had other plans for my mountain sanctuary. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. I was deep into designing a branding package for a new client, headphones on, completely in the creative zone. My phone kept lighting up with notifications, but I ignored them, determined to finish the concept boards before taking a break. When I finally reached a stopping point 2 hours later, I picked up my phone to find 63 new messages in the family group chat. That alone was unusual. Typically, the chat saw sporadic activity about birthdays, holiday planning, or sharing photos of my nieces and nephews. This volume of messages indicated something significant. I scrolled to the beginning of the conversation and felt my stomach drop. Perfect. Your mountain cabin is just sitting there. We're making it our summer home. The message from my cousin Allison was followed by a string of excited responses. Oh, my Aunt Diana, that's a wonderful idea. The kids would love it. My Uncle Robert, count us in for the 4th of July week. My other cousin Thomas, can we bring the boat? Is there boat access to the lake? And then, a message from my mother. Christine hardly uses it anyway. It will be good to see the place full of family again. The messages continued, detailing plans for different families taking different weeks, discussing meal planning, activities, and who would bring what supplies. There were photos of my cousin's kids with packed suitcases, excited faces pressed together for selfies, captioned, "Mountain Summer, here we come." Several messages included phrases like, "I can't believe we didn't think of this sooner," and "We should make this an annual tradition." Even, "Mom still has the old key from when Grandpa was alive, right?" My heart began racing. My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled through more messages, searching for any indication that someone had thought to actually ask me about these plans. There was nothing. Just my family planning to occupy my private property as if it were a communal timeshare. I flashed back to childhood memories, my diary read by my sister, my art supplies borrowed and returned broken, my college acceptance letter opened before I got home from school. The feeling was familiar, a violation dressed up as family closeness. Taking a deep breath, I typed out a response, trying to be reasonable. "Hi everyone, I noticed there are a lot of plans being made for my cabin. I actually have work scheduled there throughout the summer as it's my primary workspace when I'm not in Charlotte. Also, I'd appreciate some advance notice for visits. This is all a bit confusing since no one asked me about availability." The responses came quickly. Allison, "Oh, come on, Chris. You can work anywhere with your laptop. The kids are so excited already." My mother, "Honey, don't be difficult. Family should be welcome anytime." My Aunt Patricia, "We won't disturb your things. Promise. We just want to enjoy the mountain air. It's so hot in the city all summer." My Uncle James, "It's not like you're there all the time anyway. We saw your Instagram. You were in Charlotte all last week." Each message felt like another boundary being trampled. I tried again. I understand everyone is excited, but this is my home. I've put thousands of dollars and countless hours into renovating it. I have clients expecting work deadlines. I need to know when people are planning to be there. And, honestly, I'd prefer to be present when others are using the cabin. The responses turned more dismissive. My father, you're overreacting. It's just family wanting to enjoy the place. Allison, don't be so selfish. Think of the kids who've been cooped up in the city. They deserve some nature time. My Aunt Diana, Harold would want the whole family to enjoy the cabin, not just one person. The mention of my grandfather's name like that made my chest tighten. They were weaponizing his memory against me, twisting his intentions to serve their own convenience. As I was formulating a response that wouldn't involve telling my entire family exactly what I thought of their presumption, a final message from Allison appeared. We're leaving first thing tomorrow morning. 8-hour drive. So excited. Kids are already packed. Thomas and Melanie are meeting us there with their crew. Should be 6 adults and 7 kids total for the first week. Mom and Dad might drive up this weekend, too. 8-hour drive. That didn't make sense. The cabin was only 3 hours from Charlotte, where most of my family lived. Then it clicked. Allison had moved to Atlanta last year. She was planning to drive 8 hours with her family tomorrow to my cabin without my permission. I stared at my phone in disbelief. This wasn't just poor boundaries. This was a planned invasion. My hands shaking, I called my mother. If anyone could talk sense into Allison, her sister, my Aunt Diana, but I needed my mother's support first. Mom, I said when she answered, this situation with the cabin is out of control. Allison is literally packing her car to drive to my property without my permission. There was a pause, then a sigh. Christine, it's just for the summer. I don't see why you're making such a fuss. Making a fuss, Mom? It's my property. Grandpa left it to me, not the whole family. Well, that was his choice, but family shares, Christine. You've always been so territorial about your things. My heart sank as I realized. My mother wasn't going to support me. She continued. Besides, it's not like you live there full time. It's a vacation home, and family should be welcome at family vacation homes. It's not a vacation home, I insisted. It's my second residence and my workplace. I've invested everything in restoring it. And it looks lovely from the photos. Everyone is excited to see what you've done with the place. The conversation went nowhere. After 10 minutes of circular arguments, I ended the call and immediately dialed Allison's number. My cousin answered on the second ring, her voice falsely bright. Christine, I was just about to text you our arrival time tomorrow. We should get there around 4 p.m. if traffic cooperates. Allison, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You cannot stay at my cabin tomorrow or any day without my explicit permission. I have not given that permission. In fact, I'm telling you directly that the cabin is not available. Oh, come on. She laughed as if I were joking. It's family. We're not strangers breaking in. That's exactly what you'll be doing, I insisted. I have not given you permission to enter my property. Her tone changed, the false brightness replaced by something harder. Look, everyone's already taken time off work. The kids are packed. We've been planning this for weeks. Weeks, and in all those weeks, it never occurred to you to ask me first? I mentioned it to your mom, she said dismissively. She thought it was a great idea. My mother doesn't speak for me, and she doesn't own my cabin. God, you're being so dramatic. My kids are 8, 10, and 12. They've been talking about nothing else for days. Are you really going to disappoint children? The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost laughable, except there was nothing funny about the situation. I'm not disappointing anyone. You set your children up for disappointment by promising them something that wasn't yours to give. We're coming, Christine, she said, her voice now cold. You can either be reasonable about this or not, but we're coming. Before I could respond, she hung up. Within minutes, my phone began buzzing with text messages from various family members. The coordinated pressure campaign had begun. From my Aunt Patricia, your cousin tells me you're being difficult about the cabin. Remember how generous Harold always was with family? He would be so disappointed. From my Uncle Robert, don't understand the problem. We just want to enjoy the mountains like we did when your grandfather was alive. Don't make this weird. From my cousin Thomas, my kids have been talking about fishing all week. Don't be the bad guy here. From my uncle James, if it's about money, we can chip in for utilities, but family property should be for family. The messages kept coming, each one twisting the knife deeper. The recurring themes were clear. I was selfish, unreasonable, and betraying my grandfather's memory by not allowing my family free access to my property. Around 8 p.m., my Aunt Margaret called. As the oldest sibling in my mother's generation, she often positioned herself as the family mediator. "Christine, dear," she began in her soothing voice. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about the cabin." "There's no misunderstanding, Aunt Margaret. My family is attempting to use my private property without permission." "That's trespassing." She laughed softly. Goodness, such harsh language for family. No one is trespassing. We're just looking to spend some quality time in the mountains at my home, without my invitation or consent, I added. Well, perhaps there should have been more communication, she conceded slightly. But plans are already in motion. Allison's family is driving up tomorrow. Surely you can be flexible just for this summer. Everyone is so looking forward to it. I have installed a security system, I informed her. No one will be able to enter without my authorization. There was a pause. A security system? Don't you think that's a bit extreme for a family cabin? Harold never locked the doors in all the years he owned it. Things change. There's been vandalism in the area. Well, she said, her voice cooling. I think you're overreacting to the whole situation. No one is going to damage your precious cabin. It's family, for goodness sake. After more fruitless back and forth, I ended the call. As I scrolled through additional messages from family members, I noticed something disturbing. Several people had referenced specific features of the cabin they were looking forward to, features they couldn't have known about unless someone had shared details. With growing horror, I realized they had been passing around the address and information about my private residence. I sent a message to the family group. I want to be absolutely clear. The cabin is not available for family use this summer. I have not and will not give permission for anyone to enter the property. Please respect my boundaries and my property rights. The responses were immediate and hostile. Allison, too late. We're already packed and leaving at 5 a.m. If you're so concerned, drive up and join us. Otherwise, stop being dramatic. My mother, Christine, enough. This isn't like you. Why are you being so selfish? My father, your behavior is embarrassing. This isn't how we raised you. By midnight, I was physically ill from stress. My hands trembled. My stomach was in knots, and I had a pounding headache. I took some pain relievers and tried to sleep, but spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with scenarios of how tomorrow might unfold. The last message I saw before attempting sleep was from Allison. We're all adults here. We'll take good care of the place. See you tomorrow, maybe? As I finally drifted into uneasy sleep around 4 a.m., one thing became clear. Reasoning with my family wasn't going to work. They had no intention of respecting my boundaries or my property rights. Tomorrow would require a different approach. The shrill notification from my phone jolted me awake at 9:30 a.m. I grabbed it from my nightstand, squinting at the screen. It was an alert from my cabin security system. Motion detected on the front path. My heart racing, I opened the app, expecting to see a deer or perhaps a delivery person. Instead, I saw a car I didn't recognize pulling up my driveway. Before I could process this, my phone buzzed with a text message from Carl, my neighbor, whose property bordered mine. Your family arriving with loads of luggage. Quite a crowd. Didn't know you were expecting company. Want me to help them get settled? I texted back quickly. Not expected. Not invited. Do not help them get in. Call me. My phone rang seconds later. Christine, what's going on? Carl's voice was concerned. My family has decided to use my cabin for the summer. Without asking me, I explained, my voice tight with stress. They literally announced their plans yesterday and ignored my objections. Well, they can't get in without a key, right? Carl asked. That's what I'm about to find out, I replied, switching to the security app. What I saw sent waves of panic through my body. 3 cars were now parked in my driveway. I counted 12 people, including children, running around the property. I recognized Allison directing people like a cruise director, pointing to where things should go. Her husband, Jason, was trying the front door handle, then moving to check under rocks near the porch, presumably looking for a key. My cousin Thomas and his wife Melanie were unloading coolers and suitcases. Their 3 children were chasing Allison's kids around the yard, already trampling the native plant garden I'd carefully cultivated along the side path. "Oh my God," I whispered, watching this invasion of my private sanctuary in real time. "Christine, you still there?" Carl's voice seemed distant as I focused on the security footage. "They're trying to break in," I said, my voice hollow. "They're looking for hidden keys and checking windows." "Want me to call the sheriff?" Carl offered. "Not yet," I replied. "Let me try something first." I watched in horrified fascination as Jason moved around the cabin, trying each window. Most were locked, but he seemed determined. The children had now moved to the back deck, their voices faintly audible through the security system's microphones as they peered through the glass doors into my living room. Allison was on her phone, gesturing animatedly. I wondered if she was calling me, but my phone wasn't ringing. Then it hit me. She was probably calling my mother or Aunt Margaret, trying to get information about how to access the cabin. The sense of violation was overwhelming. My private space, my sanctuary, the place I had poured my heart and savings into, was being treated like public property. My hands began to shake so badly I had to put the phone down for a moment. A flood of memories rushed through my mind. The time Allison borrowed my new sweater in high school and returned it with a cigarette burn. The Christmas when Thomas used my laptop without permission and deleted my college application essay. The countless times my belongings were taken, borrowed, or used without my consent because family shares. My entire body felt like it was vibrating with rage and helplessness. Tears streamed down my face as I picked up the phone again to continue monitoring the situation. That's when I saw Jason examining one of the side windows more carefully. He seemed to be testing if it would open. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out what looked like a small tool. "He's trying to force a window," I told Carl, who was still on the line. "That's breaking and entering," Carl said firmly. "I'm calling the sheriff." "Wait," I said, clarity suddenly cutting through my emotional turmoil. "I have another idea." In that moment, I remembered what my grandfather used to tell me when I would come to him upset about family members taking my things or invading my space. "Christine," he would say in his gentle but firm way, "you teach people how to treat you by what you allow. Don't get mad. Get clear. Set your boundaries and hold them, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." My grandfather wouldn't want his cabin used as a battleground. But he also wouldn't want me to let my boundaries be trampled. He left the cabin to me because he trusted my judgment. It was time to honor that trust. With newfound resolve, I wiped my tears and focused on the security system's control panel on my phone. The expensive system I'd installed last month was about to prove its worth in a way I never anticipated. With steady hands, I navigated to the security system's master control panel on my app. The comprehensive system included motion-activated cameras, floodlights, a smart lock system for all entry points, and an alert system with outdoor speakers. It even featured a two-way communication function that would allow me to speak through those speakers from anywhere. I had never imagined I would be using these features against my own family, but their actions had forced my hand. I watched Jason still working at the window, the children running around the property, and Allison directing the whole operation like she owned the place. Taking a deep breath, I activated the system's emergency protocol. Immediately, powerful floodlights around the property blazed to life, despite the morning sunlight. An ear-piercing alarm began blaring from multiple speakers strategically placed around the exterior of the cabin. The security system's automated message began playing at high volume. "This is a security alert. Unauthorized presence detected on private property. Local security service has been notified. Please vacate the premises immediately." Through the cameras, I watched the chaos unfold. The children froze. Then several began crying, covering their ears against the piercing alarm. The adults spun around, looking for the source of the noise. Jason jumped back from the window he'd been attempting to force, nearly falling off the small garden wall he'd been standing on. Allison stood in the center of the driveway, her mouth open in shock, looking up at the nearest speaker. Thomas grabbed his youngest child and pulled her close, scanning the property with wide eyes. Melanie and the other adults began shepherding the children toward the cars. Several neighbors, including Carl, had emerged from their cabins to investigate the commotion. I could see them standing at the edge of my property, watching the scene unfold. It was time to make my presence known. I pressed the button for the two-way communication system and spoke clearly. Attention! This is Christine Anderson, the legal owner of this property. You are currently trespassing on private property. I have not given permission for anyone to enter or use this cabin. You need to leave immediately. The effect was immediate. Everyone froze, looking up at the speakers in disbelief. Allison recovered first, her face contorting with anger as she scanned the property, presumably looking for cameras. Christine, turn this off right now, she shouted. You're scaring the children. I continued through the speaker system, my voice calm but firm. A security service has been dispatched and will arrive shortly. I have video evidence of attempted forced entry, which is a criminal offense. Please return to your vehicles and leave the property immediately. Jason approached one of the cameras, his face inches from the lens. This is ridiculous. We're family, not criminals. Turn this system off right now. Please step away from the security equipment, I responded. Tampering with security systems is also an offense. You have 5 minutes to vacate the property before the security service arrives. This wasn't entirely true, as I hadn't actually called the security service yet, but they were on retainer and one button press away. I wanted to give my family a chance to leave voluntarily before escalating further. The children were now all crying or looking scared. Some of the adults began moving toward the cars, clearly rethinking the situation, but Allison stood her ground, phone in hand, furiously typing something. My own phone rang. It was Allison. I switched from the speaker system to take her call. What the hell do you think you're doing? She demanded, her voice shrill with indignation. Protecting my property from trespassers, I replied calmly. We are not trespassers. We are your family. Turn off these alarms right now. You're terrifying the children. The children wouldn't be terrified if you hadn't brought them to a property you had no permission to enter, I pointed out. The alarms will stop when you leave. You've completely overreacted. Allison spat. We were just trying to have a nice family summer. Now you've embarrassed all of us in front of the neighbors and traumatized the kids. I made it clear yesterday that my cabin was not available. You chose to ignore me and come anyway. These are the consequences of your actions, not mine. I'm going to call Mom, she threatened. Everyone in the family is going to hear about this. Feel free to tell them how you attempted to occupy my home without permission and got caught, I replied. Now, please leave before I need to call local law enforcement in addition to the security service. Through the security cameras, I could see that most of the adults were now moving luggage back into the cars. The children were being loaded into the vehicles, some still crying. Only Allison and Jason remained defiant. This isn't over, Allison warned before hanging up. True to my word, 2 minutes later, a car with the local security company's logo pulled up. The service had responded to the automated alert from my system. I quickly connected with them through the app to explain the situation. Miss Anderson, we received an alert about possible trespassers at your property, the security officer said after I identified myself. Yes, unfortunately, some people showed up uninvited and attempted to enter my cabin. I've asked them to leave, but they're being resistant. We'll handle it, the officer assured me. Would you like us to contact local law enforcement as well? Not at this time, I decided. Let's see if they'll leave peacefully first. I watched through the cameras as the security officer approached Allison and Jason, who immediately began talking over each other, gesturing wildly. The officer remained calm, checking identification and speaking into his radio. After a tense conversation, Allison and Jason finally moved toward their car, faces flushed with anger. Within 15 minutes of the alarm first sounding, all 3 cars were packed up. The security officer returned to his vehicle, but remained parked at the edge of the property, ensuring everyone left. As the cars began to pull away, my phone exploded with calls and messages from family members. I ignored them all. The immediate crisis was being handled. But I knew this wasn't over. After a brief discussion with the security service, I decided to drive up to the cabin myself. It was a 3-hour drive from Charlotte, but I needed to see the property in person and make sure there was no damage. More importantly, I needed to face this situation head-on. Running away had never been my grandfather's style, and it wouldn't be mine either. As I packed a bag and got in my car, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. The adrenaline that had carried me through the immediate confrontation was fading, leaving me shaky and exhausted. There was anxiety about the confrontation that might await me at the cabin. But underneath it all was a thread of fierce determination. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had stood up to my family's boundary violations in a way that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. The 3-hour drive gave me time to process my feelings and prepare for what might come next. My phone continued to buzz with messages and calls, but I used my car's Do Not Disturb function to focus on driving safely. Whatever storm awaited me, I would face it on my terms, not while navigating mountain roads. I arrived at my cabin just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The security service officer was still there, having stayed to ensure the family didn't return. To my dismay, I saw that all 3 cars were still parked about 100 yards down the road, just off my property. They refused to leave the area, the officer explained. I've informed them they can't return to your property, but they're insisting on speaking with you when you arrive. I can call for police backup if you'd prefer. I took a deep breath. No, that's all right. I'll talk to them. Thank you for staying. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw movement from the parked cars. Doors opened, and adults emerged. The children remained inside the vehicles, faces pressed against windows, watching. Allison, Jason, Thomas, and Melanie approached the edge of my property, stopping at the boundary marked by my rustic split-rail fence. Their expressions ranged from angry to uncomfortable to outright hostile. The security officer stood nearby as I exited my car and walked toward the group. The tension in the air was palpable. "Christine," Allison began immediately, her voice tight with restrained fury. "I can't believe you would embarrass us like this, calling security on your own family. What is wrong with you?" I looked at her calmly. "I told you clearly that you did not have permission to enter my property. You chose to ignore me and come anyway." "It's a family cabin," she insisted. "No, it's my cabin," I corrected. "Grandpa left it to me, not to the family collectively." Thomas stepped forward. "Come on, Christine. We just wanted to give the kids a nice summer experience. Is that really so terrible that you needed to traumatize them with alarms and security guards?" "I'm sorry the children were frightened," I said sincerely. "But they wouldn't have been in that situation if you had respected my clear communication yesterday." "You've always been selfish," Melanie said, speaking up for the first time. "Even as a kid, you never wanted to share anything." "This isn't about sharing," I replied. "This is about basic respect for boundaries and property rights. You wouldn't walk into a stranger's house uninvited. The fact that we're related doesn't change the principle." Jason, who had been quietly seething, suddenly burst out. "Do you have any idea how much time we took off work for this? How much planning went into this trip? The kids have been looking forward to this for weeks. Planning that happened entirely without consulting me, the owner of the property," I pointed out. "That's the fundamental problem here. You made plans involving my home without my knowledge or consent." "Harold would be ashamed," Allison said, her voice low and cutting. "He always welcomed family at the cabin. Always." That comment stung, but I held my ground. Grandpa welcomed invited guests. He didn't appreciate boundary violations, and he left the cabin to me because he trusted my judgment. My neighbor Carl chose that moment to approach, carrying his morning coffee. "Everything okay over here, Christine?" "Just a family disagreement," I explained. "More than a disagreement," Carl said, turning to my relatives. "I saw your husband trying to force that side window open," he said, nodding toward Jason. "Where I come from, that's breaking and entering." Jason's face reddened. "I was just checking if it was locked." "You were never locked out," I corrected. "You were never invited in. There's a difference." "This is ridiculous." Allison fumed. "We're going to speak to a lawyer about this." You can't just inherit family property and keep it all to yourself. Actually, she can, said the security officer who had been quietly observing. The deed is in Ms. Anderson's name alone. Legally, this is her private property, and you have no right to access it without her permission. We'll see about that, Jason muttered. I looked at my family members, really looked at them, and felt a strange sense of clarity. Their anger wasn't really about the cabin itself. It was about the disruption to the family dynamic. For years, I had been the one who gave in, who accommodated, who adjusted my boundaries to keep the peace. By standing firm now, I had upset the established order. I think it's time for you all to leave, I said firmly. I've made my position clear. The cabin is not available for family use without my explicit invitation. And what are we supposed to do now? Thomas demanded. We've taken time off work. The kids are expecting a vacation. That's not my responsibility, I replied. You created this situation by making plans involving my property without asking me. There are plenty of rental cabins in the area. If you still want a mountain vacation at peak season prices, that's just great, Melanie said sarcastically. I'm sorry your lack of planning has created difficulties for you, I said. But I'm not changing my position. Allison's face hardened. You'll regret this, Christine. When you need family support, don't come running to us. The threat hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to point out that family support shouldn't be conditional on allowing boundary violations. But I recognized that further discussion would be pointless. I think we're done here, I said instead. Please leave. For a moment, Allison looked like she might say something else, but Jason put a hand on her arm. Let's go. This isn't worth it. The adults turned and walked back to their cars. Through the windows, I could see the disappointed faces of the children watching the drama unfold. That was the hardest part, knowing the kids were caught in the middle of adult conflict. But I also knew that allowing my boundaries to be violated wasn't the solution. The drive back to Atlanta would be long and tense for those families. Part of me felt guilty about the children's disappointment, but a stronger part recognized that their parents had created this situation. Not me. As the cars finally pulled away, the security officer approached. Would you like me to stay longer, Miss Anderson? We can arrange extended monitoring if you're concerned about them returning. No, that won't be necessary, I said, suddenly feeling utterly exhausted. I think they've gotten the message. After thanking the officer and saying goodbye to Carl, I finally entered my cabin. Everything was as I had left it, untouched by the invasion attempt. The familiar scent of pine and the quiet creaking of the wooden floors welcomed me home. I sank into my grandfather's old armchair, the one piece I had kept exactly as it was, and felt the emotional weight of the day crash over me. Relief that my sanctuary remained intact. Pride in standing my ground. Sadness that it had come to this with my family. Anxiety about the fallout that would surely follow. My phone showed 23 missed calls and over 50 unread messages. Most were from family members. Their tones ranging from confused to concerned to outright hostile. My mother had called 7 times alone. I put the phone down without responding to anyone. Those conversations could wait. For now, I needed time to process what had happened and find my center again. As evening fell, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the fireflies emerge, just as I had done with my grandfather years ago. The mountains were cast in purple shadow, the air cooling with that particular fresh scent that always made this place feel magical. You did good, kiddo. I could almost hear my grandfather say. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. In the quiet of the mountain evenings, surrounded by the sanctuary I had created, I began to find peace with my decision. The cabin was still mine. My boundaries had been maintained, even if it cost me some family goodwill. Some prices were worth paying. The weeks following what I now call the invasion attempt were challenging. The family group chat fell silent after an initial explosion of messages, accusing me of everything from mental instability to criminal behavior. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I had humiliated my cousins and traumatized my nieces and nephews. My father sent a curt email expressing his disappointment in my selfish and immature behavior. I responded to none of it. Instead, I stayed at the cabin for 2 weeks, working remotely and giving myself space to process what had happened. The silence was healing. Each day without family drama felt like a weight lifting from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Gradually, individual messages began trickling in from various family members. My younger sister, Emily, who had been notably absent from the cabin scheme, reached out first. That sounds intense. For what it's worth, I think they were totally out of line. Grandpa left you the cabin for a reason. Love you. Her simple support meant more than she could know. My cousin Marcus, another family outlier who lived in California and rarely participated in family events, sent a brief message. Heard about the cabin situation. Respect for standing your ground. They'll get over it. Even my Uncle David, my father's brother, who had always been the quiet one at family gatherings, surprised me with a thoughtful email. Christine, while I don't approve of how things escalated with the security system, I want you to know I understand why you felt backed into a corner. The cabin is legally yours, and the family should have respected that. Give everyone time to cool down. These things have a way of settling themselves. These small gestures of understanding helped, but they couldn't erase the larger pattern of boundary violations that had characterized my family relationships for years. After returning to Charlotte, I made an appointment with a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. Dr. Lawson helped me see the patterns more clearly. What you're describing is a family system that doesn't respect individual boundaries, she explained in our second session. Your grandfather seems to have recognized this dynamic, which may be why he left you the cabin directly rather than making it family property. Everyone keeps saying I'm selfish for not sharing, I told her. There's a difference between generosity and allowing yourself to be taken advantage of, she replied. Healthy relationships require mutual respect. From what you've described, your family expects you to accommodate their wishes without extending the same consideration to you. Over the following months, Dr. Lawson helped me develop strategies for maintaining boundaries without unnecessary conflict. We worked through my feelings of guilt and the deep-seated belief that standing up for myself was somehow wrong or selfish. During this time, I also discovered an online community of people with similar experiences. Through a forum dedicated to family relationship challenges, I shared my story anonymously and received an outpouring of support and understanding. My siblings tried to claim our father's house after he left it to me, one user wrote. Standing firm was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the right decision. 3 years later, 2 of them have actually apologized. Another person shared, family entitlement is real. You're not crazy for wanting control over your own property. The fact that they attempted to enter without permission says everything about the dynamic. Reading these stories from strangers who understood exactly what I was experiencing provided validation I hadn't realized I needed. I wasn't alone in this struggle, and I wasn't wrong to protect what was mine. As summer turned to fall, I continued my healing process by reclaiming my relationship with the cabin itself. I completed several renovation projects I had been planning, painting the kitchen cabinets a cheerful blue that my grandfather would have called impractical but pretty. I replaced the old deck furniture with pieces I had carefully selected to reflect my own taste, rather than maintaining the status quo. Each change, no matter how small, felt like a declaration. Asterisk, this is mine, not the family's. Mine to change, mine to preserve, mine to share, only when and with whom I choose. Asterisk, the isolation I had initially feared after the confrontation never fully materialized. Instead, I found myself developing genuine friendships with my cabin neighbors. Carl and his wife Diane invited me for dinner, introducing me to other nearby property owners who respected boundaries and understood the concept of invitation. We've all had family members who think our vacation homes are their vacation homes, laughed Joanna, who owned a cabin about a mile away. That's why most of us don't share our door codes anymore. These new connections were refreshing. Unlike my family relationships, they were built on mutual respect and genuine interest, rather than obligation and history. When I invited a small group over for a cookout on my new deck, the joy of hosting on my own terms was revelatory. These people were there because I wanted them to be, and they had accepted because they wanted to come. No manipulation, no guilt, no expectations beyond a pleasant evening. The contrast with my family's entitled approach couldn't have been starker. By Thanksgiving, the family tensions had cooled somewhat. My mother called to discuss holiday plans without mentioning the cabin incident directly. I kept the conversation pleasant but non-committal, applying the techniques Dr. Lawson and I had practiced. I agreed to attend the family dinner, but made it clear I would be staying at a hotel, not at my parents' house as usual. That seems unnecessary, my mother commented. We have plenty of room. I prefer having my own space, I replied, simply offering no further explanation or apology. The slight pause before she accepted my decision felt like progress. The holiday itself was awkward, but manageable. Allison and her family had chosen to spend Thanksgiving with her husband's relatives, which simplified things considerably. There were a few pointed comments and significant looks exchanged, but no direct confrontation. I left early, returning to my hotel room with a sense of accomplishment rather than the emotional exhaustion these gatherings usually produced. As winter settled over the mountains, I spent Christmas at the cabin, inviting only Emily and her boyfriend to join me. The quiet celebration, free from family drama and expectations, was the most peaceful holiday I could remember. We hiked in the snow, cooked elaborate meals together, and talked openly about family patterns without the pressure of the entire clan's presence. You know, Emily said on their last evening as we sat by the fireplace, I used to think you were overreacting about how the family treats you, but seeing how much happier you are now, standing up for yourself, I get it. And I'm kind of inspired by it. Her words meant everything to me. By spring, the cabin had fully become my sanctuary again. The security system remained in place, but it no longer represented fear or defensiveness. Instead, it symbolized my right to protect what was mine, to establish and maintain healthy boundaries. Some family relationships had changed, perhaps permanently. Allison still maintained a chilly distance. My parents had accepted my boundaries, but clearly didn't understand them. Others, like Emily and Uncle David, had grown closer through their support. I had learned that healthy boundaries sometimes meant losing relationships that were built on unhealthy dynamics. While that loss carried its own grief, it made room for connections based on mutual respect and genuine caring. On a warm evening in early May, almost a year after the confrontation, I sat on my grandfather's porch, sipping tea from one of his old mugs. The mountains were vibrant with spring growth, birds calling to each other in the twilight. I thought about how much had changed, not just in the cabin, but in me. My grandfather had given me more than property. He had given me the opportunity to learn my own worth, to stand firm in the face of pressure, to create a life based on self-respect rather than accommodation. The cabin was the catalyst. But the real transformation had happened within me. Thank you, I whispered to the evening air, certain that somehow, somewhere, he understood. The peace I felt in that moment was hard-won, but complete. I had protected what mattered to me. Not just the physical space of the cabin, but my right to set boundaries and have them respected. The relationships that remained in my life were healthier for it, and I was stronger. As night fell over the mountains, I made a silent promise to myself and to my grandfather's memory. I would continue to honor both the cabin and myself by maintaining those boundaries, not with anger or defensiveness, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows her own worth. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who just didn't respect your boundaries? Sometimes, the hardest lesson is learning that true love includes respect for each other's space and property. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult family situations. Share this with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves, even when it's uncomfortable. And leave a comment telling me about a time when you had to choose between peace and self-respect. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's how we teach others to treat us with the respect we deserve.